Welcome back. You're watching Morning Prime and good morning. Let's now talk about gender issues. It feels as though the whole world is becoming increasingly upset about who our boys are and who they're becoming. But even as we are quick to point fingers at these young men, let's ask ourselves this. Is in the same world or society excluding them by putting more focus on empowering the child, the girl child that is? What about the gender empowerment balance programs? Are we implementing them? And that's why this morning we focus on the boy child and how best we can liberate them. Where are we going wrong? Joining me to have this discussion is Dr. Susan Gitau, who is a psychologist. She'll be joining us via Zoom. And here with me in studio is Thomas Ogendo, who is a program officer at the African Boy Child Network. And maybe I'll start with you, Thomas. First of all, good morning. Good morning. Paint a picture of the situation on the ground when it comes to the boy child and what they're going through.
Okay, thank you, Ashley.
You're welcome.
Painting the picture of the life that our boys are in currently, I can't say that we are in the right trajectory, because if you look at our modern boys, the way they are being raised, it's not the same way we used to raise our boys during the old days. That is when we had our cultures, we had our boys responsible, we had our boys with some beliefs that I am raised as a man and expected to take care of the society. That is not the case now, because one, we are living in a world where all genders have access to what we call the empowerment. If you look at those days, somebody called a woman was not eligible for further education. There were some cultures that inhibited that once a lady has reached a certain age, then they start the marriage process and so on and so on. So the current situation of our boys, there are so many contradictions. We have it in the legal framework, we have them in the cultural perspective, and we also have them in what we call the perception, the community perception, the sets of beliefs that people have that boys are born to suffer. It's a common notion we are using to undermine the value of our current men in the community. And perhaps that's why we are seeing a boy who initially was believed to protect the family is now being featured injuring the same family, endangering the life of that family. We are seeing boys who are believed to be protective are today killing their wives, killing their children. Whereas in the African culture, it has always been believed that a man protects the family. Yes. All
right, and we'll get back to a number of issues that you've mentioned, from the legal framework, the policies that we're going through, and even go down to the grassroots levels and look at the culture in depth. But Dr. Gitau, coming to you, first of all, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us here on Morning Prime. From what Thomas has said, how we raised our boys back then and how we are raising them right now is quite different. Boys were meant to protect, and now we're saying boys injure the same families that they were supposed to protect. Where are we going wrong?
Thank you, Ashley, and thank you for inviting me to this discussion.
You're welcome.
What Thomas has said is quite true. Traditionally, the way boys were raised, you could actually see them growing up to be men who rarely fight women, and when they do, they're very, very ashamed about it and ready to actually take any punishment or discipline that goes with that. I guess what's happened and the gap that I see is that times have changed. The way we used to raise boys changed, but we have not changed either. And I feel very, very sad, especially when I see a boy child who has no role model in the name of their father. I would rather the boys who don't have fathers in the houses, other than boys who have fathers in the houses, and they cannot even mention those fathers. So we are having very many cases of absent fathers, and when they are absent, the boy doesn't know how to behave. He doesn't know whether to copy the mother, to copy the sisters, to copy the brothers if he has any. And so we are having a boy child today who is in very severe identity crisis. And if you are that boy yourself, you can imagine the mental torture. Because there is a way, traditionally, you could see that even men around a boy, a son of the community, they would even go ahead and find out, how is this son of so-and-so doing? And sometimes men would even come in, and like today, if today you see a man coming in after maybe somebody's husband is widowed, sometimes there's a lot of confusion and other issues that come up. But before, it was pure support from the heart. And so these days, I see a boy child who is neglected. I see a boy child who is not able to balance their way of thinking. And I say this actually from the experience also in my practice, that when boys come there and I look at them and I tell them, let's share, and the girls are there, you will see a girl who is like aware and sure of where she wants to go. But the boy, he keeps saying, unless you help me, I don't know. I don't know what to say there. And it's very sad. Why? Because women also, as Thomas has said, there was a time they were so down, and the lifting of the girl child took very many organizations coming together, policies that were developed, instruments of working to empower the girl child have surely been empowered and implemented. Is it time now we also have policies? We have NGOs, many NGOs coming up, like Thomas's organization, to actually lift the boy child and probably let the boy child know. Times have changed. If your father is absent, if your parents totally are absent, if the teachers don't know how to handle this situation, if the community doesn't know how to handle this situation, who do you want to be? We are really complaining and saying that the boys are now ironing their hair, they are braiding their hair, they are trying to dress like their mothers, they are polishing their nails like their mothers. But if you go deep, if especially they have two parents, you realize the only parent that is present in this boy's child is their mother. So for me, I would also want to ask as men in the house, men in the community, our leaders who are men, are you thinking in any way that tomorrow we will raise up girls, beautiful girls, educated girls, who might not have men to marry? And it's going to be a reversal. And in Africa, it's so ingrained in a man that I'm the one who marries a woman. So we are going to see more crises in the African context than we have ever imagined. Already it's there, but it's going to be worse. So it's important that we look at the crisis that the boy child is going through, and specifically identity crisis. Not forgetting, if you go to any groupings that are not, they are not positive, you will find more boys. Even today, if you go to any Boston institutions or juvenile jails, you will find more boys than girls. If you go to gang groups, more boys than girls. If you look at the cases, like recent cases we've seen of young murderers, 2022, that is a boy. And you can tell there is something that is very, very wrong. But what are we doing about it?
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. And we'll get to all those issues, but both of you mentioned the issue of policies. There seems to be lack of proper legal framework that sort of empower the boy child as they should be. Maybe you can add on that.
Yeah, mentioning policy, before we arrive at discussion on matters policy, then we need to know what led to this policy formulation, and how are this policy being implemented, and what kind of impact are these policies creating within the community. Yeah, actually, I can take you a bit to the history of what ladies has been going through in this country, or rather in Africa.
Okay.
Yeah, and I started from the education perspective. Ladies were not allowed access to education.
Yeah.
That's true. Ladies were underrepresented, where the social norms demanded that a lady was not supposed to take any role within the community. If you go to the issue of cultural practices, there were some specific roles that were supposed to be performed by ladies, and men considered those roles or men to them. And you can see out of these, organizations ganged up and they decided to empower the girl child. But now in the process, they sidelined the other gender to give the other gender a way of sneaking out, to be on top of the bidder.
Okay.
Where the boy child still relax at the bottom of the pyramid, girls are climbing the ladder day in, day out. So when you mention the legal framework, I'll use our domestic constitution. There is the Kenyan perspective. Then I'll also take you through what we call the gender equality, the gender policy there is in the East Africa community.
Okay.
If you go to our constitution, it's very specific, and I'll take you to a specific article. We have Article 55 of the Constitution. It speaks of government taking affirmative action to ensure that youth are protected, protection of marginalized, of special groups. So within this special group, we have women, we have youth, we have the elderly, and the marginalized groups. So it means, even though we are fighting for fathers to be responsible, but within our country, it means the Constitution serves you a privilege up to age 35.
Yeah.
What happens thereafter? We have been having attempts by the Ministry of Gender to ensure that they sideline the term men within their policy framework. And as African boy child, our noises ensured that that clause was removed within that policy formulation. But now the contradiction came when now the implementation, or rather the drafting of what we call the East Africa Community gender policy, whereby it states specifically the goal of that community is to empower women, youths, and marginalized groups. Where are our boys? So those are the legal frameworks that are continuing to haunt our deeds. And perhaps boys are now coming to express themselves in a violent way. That's why today they're communicating through actions. You annoy a boy, you torture him emotionally, they respond by violence. They respond by injuring the other gender. So why? We are trying to raise boys as avocados to a point whereby the issue of gender equality is becoming a synonymous of physical test, where everybody is trying to fight for their space within that gender equality. So the policies are there that are undermining position of boys in the community, and that is where now the state needs to come in. And I can tell you, the main reason why those policies are penetrating within our society is because of the double standards that we speak. Today we speak empower boy child. Tomorrow we support an action that completely undermine position of boys in the society. When you go to an institution, then gather a group of ladies, then tell them fear men. It is not by coincidence, it is not by accident, rather, that girls pregnate themselves. It is also facilitated by boys. But if you are empowering one side and neglecting the other side, then you are creating a pool of conflict. And that is what has been resulting to what we are going through as a state.
Okay.
To mention a bit what Dr. said about absent fatherhood and lack of role model, we as African boy child believes empower boy and have a man. The main reason why I'm saying that is because if you raise a boy who is emotionally weak, who can't handle himself, then expect absent fatherhood. And absent fatherhood means is either they are totally absent, or if they are present, they are too drunk or harsh. Yes.
Empower boy and raise a man.
And raise him.
Okay, Dr. Gitao, coming to you from what he's said, and he's talked about a lot of issues, and it seems that society has a big role to play, but it is not playing that role, especially at a time where we're seeing most parents don't even have time for their children. So then how do we go forward from there?
Thank you so much. Now, that's where we are. Policy is one area. We also need a very strategic intervention ways, because if we are not strategic, on the other hand, we don't know what we are fighting, because many initiatives have been seen, including men saying they have also been sidelined. We have Maendeleo ya Wanaume. We are having very many church groupings also coming up. You are seeing if the different church environments or denominations. We are having men talking about maybe the Catholic Men Association. We have the ACK the church coming up with men groupings, and even the Pentecostal churches. I think if you pick like a few that I have worked with, like Jubilee Christian Church, if we can have people being strategic and not doing a one-time thing, because one of the things that I find an issue is when somebody means well, but they do a one-time activity, a one-time event, like when you talk about the men's conference. So are we going to have it once in a year? And when you have the men's conference, are you bringing your sons along? Is having your sons in the pipeline before you get to the next men's conference day so that they can be raised? If it is the church, because I always tell church, because that is where I say is my best home, do you have also programs and strategies to actually empower the boy child? If we are talking about the groupings that are in the community, is there a time you can see a grouping basically for the boy child? Because if I tell you, ideally, even in my work environment, it's very difficult to bring boys together. The other day I put up a training for 25 boys from the slum so that we can actually tell there is a problem. 25 of them to do free electrical installation course from one of the slums in Kiambu County, and 9 so far are remaining. And so you ask yourself, what is it that was killed in this boy? Do you even start helping them at the age of 15? Do you start helping them at the age of 18 or 20? It tells you then it is in the early formative years that something must be done. And one of the things I would like to say, like Thomas has said, if parents are drunk, if parents are absent, who is minding about this child? And one thing I like to tell the government and you, the taxpayer, is that if you calculate the amount of money we spend in our prisons, we spend in our jails, actually we should be having other projects, very vibrant projects like vocational institutions where these young people or these young boys can learn skills. If you calculate per day what one person uses, and it is you and I who will pay. So when we keep quiet about the boy child, we are also destroying ourselves. Basically, I would also like to say in the school environment, because again, that is an environment I can tell you life is changed. The school environment. But when you look at the teacher also, is the teacher empowered enough to raise that boy child? Or even the teacher is afraid to have that boy child in the school because, like Thomas has said, this person in the inside is in disarray. They are so destabilized. So if you touch something about them, they are so defensive, very defensive to a point of being violent. The teacher will do anything and everything to ensure that that boy is not in school. So when he's out of the school, these days, you cannot just transfer your child. A boy goes to another school and they're like, we need a letter, which is okay. It's very important from the other school. What did they do? Oh, this boy led a strike. Oh, this boy. But nobody ideally maybe had the competence to pick that this boy could be highly depressed, could be could have a personality disorder, could have come from a very abusive family setting. Maybe the teachers don't have the capacity. And if there are people in this nation that I hail and celebrate, are the teachers. But I also feel, how do we direct our resources? Do we direct them thinking about the child of this nation? Is it a very serious discussion, really? It ought to be a serious discussion, because there is no point. For me, I always say there is no point of raising great minds who are going to be criminals tomorrow. Raising great minds who are going to do things and you can see, wow, I thought this person knew better. Kumbe, if you go back, they were smart, they escaped. There are very many boys who escaped a lot of, they escaped being caught doing the wrong things, and now they rose, they went to university where there's a lot of relaxation in looking at this young man, and there they went out as very qualified, competent men in the society. And what you see at the end of the day, because again they become leaders, and more men than women in the whole world are in top leadership. At the end of the day, my question to them, who can you say I have mentored as a political leader, and how have I mentored them? As a church leader, and how have I mentored them? Because there's a very big gap, and the cry is huge, Ashley. Go everywhere, go to the churches, go to the community level, go to schools. The cry is so loud that something must be done, but it must be done strategically. One thing I have told you I have a problem with, when we are not strategic, we normally don't get the results we desire.
Okay, strategy and how we need to go about issues. Of course, we'll continue this conversation. We take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking about the toxicity that we're seeing in men. What does it mean to be male to its core? Our guests will be answering that shortly.